Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. So let's talk about this IVF bombing that took place in Palm Springs, California. Now, I'm going to run this story real quick just to catch you up as an update.
We have large explosion with the building compromised.
A calculated act of terror shaking the community of Palm Springs, California.
This was a targeted attack against the IVF facility. Make no mistake, we are treating this as an intentional act of terrorism.
The target, fertility clinic, American Reproductive Centers.
I heard this just huge boom.
A car bomb exploding around 11 in the morning on Saturday, destroying part of the clinic, injuring 4, and sending debris flying several hundred feet away in every direction.
There's metal everywhere.
The suspect, 25-year-old Guy Barkis from 29 Palms, a desert community an hour away. Authorities say he was killed in the blast, and 2 senior law enforcement officials briefed on the incident, telling NBC he was driven by an anti-natalist ideology, a belief that no one should have children.
We are tracking a possible manifesto out there, and it's part of our ongoing investigation.
All right, guys, when I saw this, my first impression was the size of the blast. The blast was huge. The blast area itself was hundreds of yards, 3 to 4 blocks of damage surrounding the building with 1 casualty. Now, originally they reported that there was someone who was killed and 4 that were injured. The building, the IVF clinic, was actually closed at the time, and he was that 1 casualty. He was the one who was killed in what people are thinking is a suicide bombing. So I want you to put this in perspective, and this is why it's important that we do videos like this, because the mainstream media, corporate media, is not talking about these things. One, it doesn't fit their political narrative, so they're steering away. But here's something significant about this particular situation is the size of the bomb. To make a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device this size is insane. It's very hard to do. And I heard an FBI expert say that this was very amateurish. Well, it's not very amateurish when you have a vehicle-borne IED, an improvised explosive device, that works. So there is some speculation that he accidentally killed himself. So his plans were, 1, to live stream it. And according to officials, a manifesto published online before the bombing included a hope to sterilize the planet of the disease of life. Although it has not yet been linked to Barkis, they are thinking that this is the manifesto that was posted that belonged to him. Now, according to the FBI in a press conference, they say this guy is a nihilistic. A nihilistic person or belief system holds that life is meaningless and that traditional values, morals, or beliefs are baseless. It's a great way to live your life, or not. I even found a quote from somebody who supposedly is a nihilist. The only absolute knowledge attainable by man is that life is meaningless. I mean, that quote has meaning, so I don't think that's true. So if we look at some statistics of improvised explosive devices in vehicles, you'll find a couple of examples in recent history, but dating back as far as the Oklahoma City bombing. Let's roll this tape.
And parked the Ryder truck in a drop-off zone situated under the daycare center. Then he left and docked the truck. As he headed to get his getaway vehicle, he admitted that he had dropped the keys to the truck a few blocks away. At 9:02 a.m., the Ryder truck exploded in front of the north side of the building, creating a 30-foot wide and 8-foot deep crater on Northwest 5th Street next to the building, and the blast measured 3.0 on the Richter scale. The bombing killed 168 people. The victims ranged in age from 3 months to 73 years old, including 3 pregnant women, with another 680 people injured, and it destroyed more than 1/3 of the building, which had to be demolished.
168 killed, many of them women and children, over 600 people injured. In most recent history, we had the 2020 Nashville bomber, Anthony Quinn Warner, who used an RV full of explosives. Only the bomber was killed, but caused massive infrastructure damage, and he had conspiratorial beliefs. That was the conclusion of why he did what he did. But look at this picture. Plenty of damage done, and I'm surprised that nobody was killed. Before that, in 2018, we had the Austin bombing spree. Mark Condit, he used various explosive devices. A bomb was found in his car as he blew himself up. Here's a timeline of all of his specific attacks. And in 2010, if you guys remember this far back, 15 years ago, there was the Times Square car bomb attempt where Faisal Shahzad bomb failed to detonate Islamic extremism, and he was in an old Nissan Pathfinder. So a lot of the things that I think about when looking at this vehicle that were underplaying it in the national media and from the investigation perspective is how does a young 25-year-old kid, this dude, get enough knowledge, training, and equipment to do an attack this massive? Now, the reason there weren't that many casualties is because the clinic itself was closed, and there is belief that the target was the embryos, which is ironic because firefighters and police officers on the ground, despite the collapse of the building, are being deemed heroes because they went in and saved a lot of those IVF stuff. I don't even know what it is. I'm not too schooled up on IVF, but they saved the embryos and the eggs. Is that, I don't even know. Is that embryos and eggs? You guys tell me. They save them because many people who are using IVF are trying to create life where they can't naturally. I kind of took a step back and was like, what? These guys are heroes for saving some capsules of eggs, but it's real. I mean, the meaning for that for so many people who want to procreate, while women are wearing t-shirts and protests saying, I just got in it, the word, I can't even say that word because I'll get suppressed on YouTube. Well, speaking of that, if you're interested in hearing the uncensored version of this with more details and nuance, check out my patreon.com/Mike Glover account. I'll link that down below. For the underground episode, you just need to be a member, and that's absolutely free. If you want to support the channel, you can, or support companies like Wolf 21, which is my company. We just made Stand Down. Stand Down is a functional sleep supplement that allows you to get a good night's rest using natural supplementation. It has 0 CBD and has magnesium, reishi mushrooms, chamomile, and the good old melatonin. Except we're not pumping you full of melatonin. It's a low microdose so you can get used to it, but a natural sleep aid that gets you a good night's rest. Moving on. So I'm concerned if this guy was a lone wolf, which I want to get your opinion on this. There are two thoughts. One, that he's a lone wolf. He did this attack by himself. No help, no assistance, and was operating in a black hole. The other thought is that, and it's probably a conspiracy, is that somehow the government, some organization utilized him in a terrorist attack against the clinic. Now, again, to conduct terrorist attacks doesn't necessarily mean that casualties are the main target of opportunity. When you operate as an insurgent in a terrorism operation, psychological operations are just as significant, even if it means getting your jihad on and clocking yourself off, which this dude did. But when I looked at the blast profile, I thought to myself, how is this possible? This is a massive explosion. This dude had some skills or had some help. Leave me your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let's play this video segment that talks about improvised explosive devices. And I want you to see this explosion, this vehicle-borne IED that's used in training, just to get an idea of how big this blast actually was. Let's roll the tape.
Today, the students in the class are coming out and they're processing the crime scenes, collecting valuable evidence, identifying IED components, trying to determine what the charge was, approximately how big the charge was, and what the vehicles involved were.
So just to give some context, in the last 50 years, there's only been a dozen or less bombings in the U.S. involving vehicles. Why does this give me chills and all the hair on the back of my neck stand up? Because I just did a video on Mike Glover Stories, which you should follow. I also just did a Mike Force podcast that just dropped a couple days ago, which I'll link down below, about this idea of spiritual warfare and how the insurgent lives within. And the reason I did that episode is because I believe there is a campaign going on between good and evil, and there's a lot of people, especially in this country, that are suffering from mental health issues. Check out these statistics on Zoloft that I found. In 2023, because they don't keep up to date on this, Zoloft was the most prescribed antidepressant in the United States. It accounted for nearly 17% of all antidepressants that year. And the exact number isn't well known. Previous year's numbers in 2022, there were approximately 39.9 million prescriptions. You think that number went up? Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if you looked at the 2024 numbers and they doubled. I would not be surprised. 40 million people were prescribed Zoloft in a country where you take 340 million, the U.S. population, and then you cut out the kids and then the teenagers, and then I guess the senior citizens that are in hospice or assisted living, and you shrink down the numbers. 40 million people are prescribed Zoloft in 1 year? How is that even possible? The reason I think this is important is because as we continue politically, globally and nationally, to accelerate American nationalism, our country's goals and objectives under this current administration, we are going to have more residual extremism, not just people who talk online, but 25-year-old kids when they were 9 that burned down their own home. That's a true story from this kid. At 25 years old, getting enough technical information and is sophisticated enough to blow up an IVF clinic when that bomb could have been in a crowded area where he could have created as many casualties as he wanted. Now, if you're curious like me about this Zoloft with 40 million people that were prescribed it, I try to look for numbers for profit. Are you surprised that the national media isn't talking about this situation when Pfizer, their national media titled sponsor, is the one who's making all this money for mental health disorders? So if they get on and do a story about some kid who is potentially on some SSRI having issues mentally, then I don't know, maybe it's a commercial for Pfizer. But in 2019, they made $294 million from Zoloft alone. They made $294 million. In 2019, which is 6 years ago, I could imagine that number is a lot higher. I mean, you could do the math on the prescription of 40 million Americans in 1 year and figure out why the numbers are so massive. Not only the massive numbers of net profit, but the incentive structure and design of keeping people more unwell and mentally unstable. Guys, this is insane. This is the state of our country. And the reason this is alarming and we should be paying attention is this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I happen to think that in the near future, there's going to be another 9/11. There is going to be an attack by jihadists, by the cartel, or just extremists who think that life isn't important. Either way, you need to be prepared. And look, there's a lot of this I need to talk about on the underground because I just can't talk about it here. I love YouTube. I'm so thankful for YouTube, but they just won't allow me to say what I need to say. And I'm headed off to the underground to say what I got to say. Guys, if you're finding value out of this channel, make sure you give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, and then catch me in the underground. Till next time, peace.